So, without further ado, then, Anne is going to do a presentation for us to start with. Anne, did you want to introduce yourself any more at all? I've said your name, but did you want to, just in case anyone hasn't seen you before, just say sort of where you're from, what your professional background is for me.
Sure, thanks Charlotte, and thanks Leukaemia Care for inviting me here today. Hi to everybody, it's lovely to see 97. We haven't broken the record for last time. I think we had about 109, we reckon, but we might get people coming in. So I'm Anne Johnson, I'm a non-medical consultant. I'm a consultant occupational therapist by background, and set up our Centre for Fatigue Services now about 18 years ago for people with variety of fatigue, including cancer-related fatigue. And I've done lots of work with Leukaemia Care over the years, and we did a UK road trip really, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Midlands, Southwest, Southeast, you name it. We missed that with the dreaded COVID, but there we are. We're still here. I'm still here and in business, and nice to be with you all. When I'm not in Bath doing that, we receive national referrals, so people on this call can get referred to us as long as their GP supports them. Especially with the online stuff. When I'm not there, I'm at the University of the West of England, and I'm the Patient and Public Involvement Lead for Learning and Teaching in the Faculty of Health and Applied Sciences. A bit of a mouthful, really. Oh, hello from Yorkshire. Yeah.
Windy Yorkshire.
Very nice. I'm going to do a little poll in a minute about how far people have come. Yes, so I do that. And I'm also an ambassador for the Personalised Care Institute, which means right place, right treatment, right person, right time. And it's the only way to deliver health and social care services, in my opinion. So yeah, that's what I do. My business is fatigue. And as you can imagine, Charlotte just asked me, we've been very busy with long COVID, but still have time for you. So I'm here. I'm going to share these slides with you today. Who's come the furthest? I wonder. There'll be this absolutely massive, we've broken 100, Charlotte. There'll be this massive sort of like typing now. I think last year we had someone from Colorado.
We did, yes, I remember that. Yeah, to see if anyone can beat that. We've got a few islands, both northern and south island. Good.
Very good, very good. From north and south. Edinburgh, nice. Yeah. We've got Scotland. Oh, we've got Wales. I trained in Cardiff.
There we go. We've got the whole of the UK. That's nice to know. Nice to know we're reaching all over the UK.
Everybody's competing now, Charlotte.
Nottingham, Hertfordshire, Mars.
No, I don't believe that. I'm sorry. No,
I didn't realise they had Wi-Fi on Mars, but there we go.
Yeah, I wonder if it's Virgin or True Speed or
whichever it is. I want to know, so it must be good.
Must be good. Yeah.
I will pop up your slides for you now, Anne.
Great stuff. And there will be time, as Charlotte will have probably said, and I'm sure it was in the information, for a Q&A at the end. We are a lot of people, and we'll do our best to sort of address any queries. Okay. So yeah, that's me. We're going to look at coping with troublesome fatigue this afternoon. We've got about 40 minutes to whip through. I've got about 30 slides here for you. So off we go. Thanks, Charlotte. Okay, so we're going to look at cancer-related fatigue. It is called that in the trade, as you probably all know. I'll reduce it to CRF, so it's not so much of a mouthful. We're going to look at how common it is and how it can impact on your day-to-day life, because it can be a devil. Thanks. So what is it? Well, this Comprehensive Cancer Network in 2011 gave this definition, but it is 10 years old now, but it still holds good. As do all the simplest and good things. Doesn't need to be complex. This is what it is. It's a persistent and distressing subjective sense of physical, emotional and or cognitive tiredness or exhaustion relating to cancer or cancer treatment. And the fatigue is not proportional to recent activity, and it interferes with usual functioning. I've highlighted some of the key words there. Subjective sense means that it's how you feel it affects you. Never be worried about that, okay? No one has the right to criticise you for feeling tired, and however that comes out. And it might be in a physical way that it's demonstrated, and people understand physical fatigue because people without leukemia and so on all get tired, as you will have done before you were ill. And people understand that, because you go to the gym or you look after your kids and you get physical tiredness, normally alleviated by usual means. But this is different. It can be emotional as well. You know, we can get distressed, we can get stressed. That will cause you fatigue. Or it might be cognitive tiredness. And this is the one that people describe perhaps as a brain fog, can't think straight, think they've got dementia, think they're going a bit mad. But cognitive tiredness can be very invasive. And most of the patients we see have a degree of all of those three elements. But it's their fatigue, and we need to respect that. Next slide, thanks. So how common is it then? I think it was someone called Sue Renton just put up a comment before we started saying that's the commonest thing that she'd had. It is very common for people living with and beyond cancer episodes. We don't really understand why, and we don't really understand all of the mechanisms, but commonly people accept that it's related to cancer treatments. But Macmillan Cancer Support estimate, and I'm a Macmillan professional too, which means that they have supported my services to actually develop the cancer strands. They estimate that up to 90% of anybody who has had a cancer experience will experience, significant fatigue at some point in their journey, which is staggering, really, isn't it? The number of people that have all the different sorts of cancers that sadly are around. Thanks, Charlotte. So, but when might it occur in terms of, how common it is? Well, it could be before diagnosis as a symptom, because I think, when we do these sessions face to face, I always ask the audience, what, looking back, reflecting back, how many of you became tired before you were diagnosed? And most of the audience go, actually, yeah, but you just normalise it. You just think it's work, it's pressure of life, it's my kids, it's my college work, and so on. So you don't take any notice of it, yeah. And I've seen the tweets around this from Leukaemia Care, and I always pass them on, because don't ignore it. If it's very, very different for you. At and around the time of diagnosis, well, we sort of expect that, really, I guess. And all of you, sadly, you'll remember the time when you were given such horrible news as you were, or your loved one, or friend, or whatever. And that emotional fatigue can be overwhelming. Trying to deal with what you're being told by specialists or whatever. So it is very common around that time for lots of reasons. During the active treatment phase, yeah, we all understand that one, radiotherapy for some people with some sort of cancer types, chemotherapies and so on, surgery for some cancer patients. Natural that the body is going to feel worn out. I did have a friend actually who had breast cancer, who had chemotherapy and had no fatigue. Which was amazing, really, but that is quite rare, but it can happen. And during the post-active treatment phase and beyond, and somebody's just made a comment there, I think, GPs and medics and the public sort of expect to be tired for a bit after you've had, an active treatment sort of session or episode, or you're moving on through the journey. But, a year, 5 years, 20 years, someone just said, I've had it 50. And, I think those long-term and medium-term impact of fatigue effects are not well understood. So what I want to say to you is, please don't feel guilty about it. You didn't ask to get it if you've got it, Thank you, Charlotte. So it can impact on everything. It's just so invasive, and life can be what we call disrupted, literally. It's like throwing an incendiary into a pond. It's all calm, and then somebody chucks this massive boulder into this pond, and it goes and ripples out. And all of those ripples can impact on your personal care, like the toad in the shower at the bottom, your work, your leisure activities, looking after your kids, doing what you'd like to do from a social and leisure perspective, and your very sense of being with your family, with your friends, and that's why it's so upsetting to have for people, because it just disrupts the you that you are and your being. Thank you, Charlotte. So this loss then, yeah, I wonder if that's Sheena that I know there. Might be. Occupational disruption can lead to this loss of sense of self, okay? Because there's no doubt about it, we are what we do. And it's simple. If we can't do things that we want, it is. Hello, Sheena. Lovely to see you. Thank you for that lift that you gave me in Scotland the other year. If we can't do things we need and have to do, we may lose our sense of self and feel we've lost a sense of balance in our life. And I've got the man, you've got hair now. I won't recognise you, Sheena. Lost a sense of balance. Yeah, it throws you all off kilter. Okay. And it's very unpleasant, and people struggle, and they are lost, literally. And it is like a bereavement, for your sense of self is gone. Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, so being aware that you're probably struggling to find that person. You will experience feelings of grief, and it's very, very normal. And you can relate that to other times of loss in your life, I'm sure. But this time it's about you. And that's really scary, okay? And very frustrating and upsetting for you. So how can we tackle it? Well, it's useful when this fatigue sort of is bombarding and stops you doing things, to have some awareness of your current and available energy levels. But how can we do that? Next slide, please. Okay, so it's useful to think about you in terms of being like this metaphor of the mobile phone. And some of you would have seen this before. And, this, if you take nothing else away but the fact that our bodies, when I talk about our bodies, I'm talking about you as a person. I'm talking about your mind, your values, your body, is a whole entity, a bit like a mobile phone. Now, on the top left there, you can see that a mobile has gone it's gone very flat. Okay, so normally going around the circle in a clockwise direction, we plug it in, don't we? And we normally do that overnight. And so overnight there's this lovely charge going into there's the lightning flash on the battery, and because that phone is tip top and it's working really well. This chap here, look, can take the phone out and use it in his car there, and it's 100% full, and it's charged up, and he knows exactly what it can use it for. And then as we move around the circle, that wiggly line says, always use it for, sat nav all day, and it'll get drained again. So around you go in the circle. So next slide, please. Okay. So for reasons we don't yet fully understand, your battery doesn't feel anything like fully charged overnight. So when you wake up in the morning, therefore, it is very common to feel unrefreshed, okay? So some people think like the more they sleep, the better they'll be. But for some people, that's almost as bad as not sleeping enough, and we're all very unique and individual with our sleep. And really, it's less about the hours and more about the quality of the sleep that's important. Next slide, please. So if you can learn to recognise what drains your battery, and I've put it in red there on purpose. Doesn't mean it's bad because it's red. It just means that, to be mindful of the fact that high energy activities I'm going to talk about, the stuff that drains your personal battery the most, is important to be aware of. And also what recharges you that's not sleep, because sleep doesn't necessarily recharge you. So this is where we have to get clever with ourselves and give ourselves time to recognise this for ourselves, because we're all very different. What drains me is going to be different to what drains Charlotte, and so on. And what recharges me will be different. For me, I think I've probably shared with you before, might be a nice cup of tea sitting in the garden, even if it's raining, and I've got my coat on and my brolly. That might invigorate me, it might recharge me emotionally. We need to remember physical, cognitive and emotional fatigue. Well, fatigue during the night, Sandra, filters into some of the sleep hygiene stuff, which we will get onto a little bit later in the slides, if that's okay. Okay, next slide, Charlotte, please. So, yeah, so your battery, consider the high energy activities, what drains your battery the most. It's not an exact science, it's about you. What drains, but not quite so much, what we call low energy activity, and we sort of colour code that in yellow. And then what restores your battery, we colour code that on this chart I'm going to show you in a minute in green. But it is that physical, emotional and or cognitive stuff. It's not just the physical, okay? Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so here is an activity, rest and sleep log page that we use with all of our fatigue patients coming through to us with complex fatigue such as yourselves. And we've got 7 days a week. We've got a 24-hour clock there on the page. And we call these activity, rest and sleep logs, or maybe a diary. Some of you make diary and use that. But before you start filling this in terms of, you know, if you got up, for example, at 8 o'clock in the morning and you spent 2 hours, excuse me, doing what you classify as high energy activity, you'd colour each 2 hours there in red, and you'd fill it in periodically through the day so you didn't forget in case you might have cognitive fatigue. But before you can even attempt this, you need to really spend a few weeks classifying for yourself what drains but not so much, and what restores. Okay. Thank you, Charlotte. On that log, by the way, sleep we colour code as blue, but we know that sleep's not necessarily refreshing, and that's why we need for you in part to attend what's happening in the daytime. You are a 24-hour person. So your battery, how to top it up? Well, physical activity of a moderate nature. Okay, now what the heck does that mean on the NHS England guidelines? Well, it means things that you do where you get out of breath, but you can still speak. Okay. Now, some people will have, unfortunately, you know, problems with larynx or head and neck issues or whatever, and so they may get out of breath. But I'm talking generally here about people that come to this support group. So get out of breath, but can still speak. Of 150 minutes a week, the evidence is emerging to say that may help to reduce some cancer-related fatigue. But you notice I use the term physical activity. I didn't say exercise. I say physical activity because, again, there's this assumption that you've got to do exercise. You've got to be on a treadmill. You've got to be on a spinning class or whatever. But you don't. It doesn't have to be in a gym. You know, it takes a lot of confidence. It takes a lot of body confidence to be in a gym. It takes a lot of stamina to get dressed and get those lycra things on and everything else will wear you out to actually get in the gym. And if you don't like gyms, it can be vigorous lawn mowing, for example. I mean, some people can go wild with a lawnmower or pushing a pram. And you've all seen, I'm sure, the new, you know, those are not that new anymore, but the jogging push chairs with the large wheels, you know, that could be your physical activity of 150 minutes a week if you've got kids. Okay. The bit in the bicycle lawnmower, that's a little bit contrived, but I just thought it was quite amusing. I've never prescribed one of those, but clearly some handy person there thought they'd combine their gardening with their physical activity, and a presto, you've got that mower. But just bear that in mind. And it doesn't all have to be in one go either. It can be broken up across 7 days, which is really important if you've got fatigue, because then you can pace it using your diary. Okay, but the key being it must be something that you enjoy. You're more likely to succeed if it is. If you feel like it's torture, forget it. We're not going to do it, are we? We're not going to do it. Next slide, please, Charlotte. So here we go. A few more bits and pieces about you know, restoring yourself. It's not sleep. We are talking about all of these things and other things as well. You know, it might be a gentle walk. For some people, it might be meditation for, you know, half an hour, or breathing exercises or whatever. It's whatever floats your boat. And you know, don't compare yourself with other people. Try not to. I know it's hard, and it's also hard not to compare yourself with who you used to be, that person that you're grieving for. But in order to sort of settle those feelings for yourself, that emotional impact, it's, if you can, just try and settle in the moment and think about what's going to restore you at this time. Next slide, please. So establishing routines, that is, we know from some of the research that if you've got a routine, even if you're having a bad day, if you can keep to your routine of getting up at a regular time, having your lunch at a regular time, settling down at night, regular times, you've got like this skeleton on which to hang the rest of your activities. And we can train our brains, you see, into getting used to those routines, like we used to perhaps when we were children. You knew that you're going to bed at a certain time and so on. And we can do that as adults as well. And it can be very, very helpful if you're all over the place and not really knowing where to start. Using the 3 Ps then of prioritizing what you need to do. Is the world going to stop revolving if you don't do that washing basket today? Probably not. And maybe just do half of it. Okay. Planning ahead if you can, planning what perhaps you're going to eat for the week with help or whatever, rather than leaving it to the last minute, getting really hungry and then having to go and drive to buy food and so on and so forth. And pacing activities like the 150 minutes of physical activity, for example, can be more rewarding. And it can be rewarding if you put the little bits of green to restore yourself throughout the day, rather than having your whole morning using up all your high energy and you're spent, nothing left for the afternoon. What a lot of people with fatigue of this sort do, is, especially if they're working, they put absolutely every bit of energy into that work from Monday to Friday. If they're lucky, to be working sort of and can do a full-time job. Not everybody can. That's okay. We're all different. But what workers commonly do is put it all in there. They get to the weekend, they crash. There's nothing left for the nice stuff and the leisure stuff. Okay, that's not good occupational balance. Okay, so pacing. Injecting the restorative, breaking up the red and the yellow is really, really good in the diaries. Adopting sleep hygiene principles, and as I say, we'll talk about those later. It's not about having a shower before you go to bed, or for some people it might be. It's about organising your brain and your daily routine to incorporate a wind down towards the end of the day that prepares you and your brain for bed. And you can get yourself into that, and you can train your brain to actually think, oh, right, she's slowing down now. We're getting the pajamas on. Oh, we're having the warm drink. Okay, let's slow it down. And you can train yourself to sort of set yourself up to be better prepared to relax and go when you go to bed. There's all sorts of things in there, like the bedroom environment and so on. And I think I've got those in the slide later on. Being self-compassionate is something, it sounds sort of like easy, but actually it's not. The people who put the biggest expectations on themselves are you yourselves, okay? Okay, your relatives and friends and employers may not be able to see or understand fatigue, but actually it's probably yourself that's driving yourself the most and putting the expectations on yourself. So I would say be self-compassionate. You didn't ask to be ill. It is horrid. Accepting where you are doesn't mean you like it. But actually what accepting will do is enable your mind to be freed up from the emotional baggage that is the grief for lost self and the fretting about what you're going to be like in 3 or 6 months' time. Because if you're doing that, you will certainly miss out on what you've got in front of you today. And we want you to have quality of life today, despite everything. Okay, so self-compassion. Think, what would you say to your best friend who is in the same situation as you? And I bet you'd be nicer to them than you are to yourself. Okay, that's about looking after yourself. It's about eating and having nice snacks throughout the day, making sure you eat properly and drink enough water and so on. And do some relaxation if you like, but it's not for everybody. Some people just can't fidget. They'd rather go for a gentle walk to relax, and that's absolutely fine. But most importantly, try and have a bit of fun. My goodness, when you're ill, you can forget those sorts of things, can't you? And we all need that for balance. And if you can laugh at yourself sometimes, it might just break that tension, you know, and that hard drive on yourself. Okay, so just ease it off. Okay, next slide, please, Charlotte. So the sort of thing that gets in the way of us coping and perhaps being more self-compassionate at times is something that does get in the way, and I've just mentioned that to you. Our sleep or lack of it, yeah, that gets in the way. And I've mentioned the expectations of ourselves and other people. And here are some kindness images here. I'm not really a dog person, but I do like that picture. It's lovely, isn't it? Just ask yourself, will the world stop revolving if I don't do everything I'm trying to expect myself to do today? You know, and usually it doesn't. Yeah, okay, there are times when you've got to do something, you know, one of your kids is not well, or parents or whatever. But generally speaking, the day-to-day stuff, if you can break it up, be self-compassionate, think about your sleep. And expectations of other people, well, they may have expectations, and that's where people like me and yourselves have a role in educating other people who don't understand. Okay, next slide, please, Charlotte. Okay, so the sleep hygiene and acknowledging these expectations. Yeah, you matter, and these two things feed into that. That's okay, Charlotte, that's fine. Next slide, please. Lovely. It's quite helpful, actually. So what is sleep hygiene? As I said, it's not just about a wash before you go to bed. So the noun is it's about habits and practices that are conducive to sleeping well on a regular basis. Yes. Okay, thank you. Next slide. Now, this index I took out of a journal of behavioural medicine a few years back, about 3 years ago now, for leukemia care patients, actually. And we used to sort of fill it in on our away days and things. And this sleep hygiene index has got 13 points. And if you do any of these, you may not actually be adopting the best sort of approach to deal with sleep issues. So there's a flip side for all of these. So when you've got quiet minute, you don't feel too fatigued, have a look at these. Okay, so one, for example, is daytime naps of more than 2 hours. Now, we know, why is that bad? Because we know if your sleep isn't refreshing and you're sleeping, you know, quite a lot in the day, you may actually be making your nighttime sleep worse, because what you're doing is you're giving yourself a sort of a jet laggy sort of type. You're switching your clock around. Okay, the routines bit applies to 2 different times of the day, going to bed different times. You're not training your brain into having that steady routine. I know it's a faff, and I know you can't be spontaneous, but if you've got a problem with unrefreshing sleep, some of this might help. Yeah, not over exercising within an hour of going to bed, because what happens is you get this second wind and it will wake you up. You think, oh God, this is great. But you know, it's like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. If you've been out for a run, sort of 8 till 9, and you're really hot and bothered. Stay in bed longer than you should 2 or 3 times a week. Well, we all like a little bit of a lie-in, but I think that's like people perhaps who are staying until 11, you know, if you can, if you're not working and things, just be aware of it. Using alcohol, tobacco or caffeine within 4 hours of going to bed or after going to bed. Well, some people, and if you can manage it, having a glass of wine in the evening or whatever is fine. But we know that to have, perhaps a few glasses, for example, it will make you feel tired, but it interferes with the old brain function, and it will also wake you up. Okay. The caffeine and stuff is obviously a stimulant. You know this, I'm sure. 7 and 8 really are pretty much the same. Your brain is sort of like really more wired if you're playing games on the internet where you sit in bed playing them and you've got a sleep issue. Chances are your brain will be whizzing around, just like it will if you go to bed feeling stressed, angry, upset or nervous. And it's that old adage, isn't it, about not going to bed on an argument, really. Okay. Don't open a bill just before you're due to get into bed, all right? If it's arrived, leave it till tomorrow. You know it's there. Be mindful. Think, yes, I know it's there. I will open it in the morning, but I'm not going to open it at 10 o'clock tonight. Okay? Because you'll just upset you, especially if you know it's your holiday one that's loads of money or something. I use my bed for things other than sleeping or sex. Well, sex can be very cathartic in terms of relaxing you, of course. It releases various relaxing sort of hormones, which is lovely. But, you know, if you've sort of like got a curry in bed there in a pot or something, or you're cramming for an exam while you're sitting in bed, chances are you'll associate your bed with the strong smells and also maybe the tension around your studying books and things. Okay, so if you can, leave those outside and keep that as a sanctuary, your bedroom. Okay, now the sort of what we call the ergonomics, the environment, very important. I sleep on an uncomfortable bed. Okay, too low, too high, too soft, too hard. They're all different. They're like shoes. You need to sleep, you need to lie on them to try them. Never be embarrassed about doing that in a shop. Okay, and don't go at the end of the day when you're totally worn out, because you'll buy the first bed you lie on, which might be dreadful, you know. Anyway, yeah, you need a bed that supports you, that doesn't sort of give you backache immediately as you lie on it. But please don't feel you definitely need an orthopedic bed. All right. It's got to be right for you, the right sort of softness, hardness, and so on. Some people can't cope with those memory foam mattresses. They're too hot. They make them sweat a lot. And if you're having treatment and things, just be mindful of that. You can get those chillos, which are the pillows that people use. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of those. Charlotte's nodding there. So they keep you cool, and you know, a lot of sort of people going through menopause like those, or other conditions that make your temperature rise. Chillo, and I think Chillo might do a mattress topper actually. Excuse me, as well. If you get too hot, but think about your duvet. Maybe have one leg out of the bed, one in. My son taught me that. So it keeps him cool, but keeps him warm and cozy as well. Okay, but try them out. Sleep Council's got a website. Have a look on there. Your bedroom also shouldn't be too hot, too noisy. Hopefully too cold. If you've got noise, maybe earplugs. Brightness, white light will switch your brain on, which is great in the morning. And if you are feeling woozy, go and stand on the doorstep and get the natural light onto you. It will switch your brain on automatically. But red light will switch it off. So if you do need to have a light on for safety to go to the loo or look after a child or parents or whatever, a little red bulb perhaps on the landing or something like that will, if you need to get up, it won't ignite your brain into full activity. And don't do the important work. Yeah, try, you know, it's the same as doing it in bed, but don't do really stressful things. You know, send that stressful email to the person you've fallen out with just before you go to bed. Okay, and try not to think, plan, and worry when you're in bed. Try just to let your mind free. If you've got stuff on your mind, have a pile of post-its by the side of your bed and a pencil, and if they crop up, just write it down, stick it on the post-it and put it in the drawer for the morning. You're not ignoring it, so you won't worry then that you're ignoring it, but you can come back to it another time. Okay? Okay, next slide, please. So they can all contribute to poor sleep. So be creative. You know, if you are doing any of the things on that list, okay, because you might be able to change what sleep is like for you at this time. Lovely. Next slide, Charlotte. So this normally when we were face to face, normally when somebody was saying about a multicolored bulb there, sorry, we get people to do this sort of in pairs and things about expectations really of self and other. But just consider, you know, what's driving you day to day. If you feel a bit overwhelmed and think, oh, I should, I must, I must do this. They say this, they say that. I want you to stop. I want you to think about the contents of this slide. Think about how, you know, having what you've had has impacted on your expectations, and just deconstruct those a little bit, okay, and be self-compassionate. Other people's expectations, as I mentioned, it may be that someone is really driving you. It might be a manager, you know, an employer or something. And And it may be that, a very frank and conversation is needed with them about, look, I'm really sorry, but I have this fatigue which is hidden. It's well documented in the academic literature and the cancer literature. Macmillan have a massive report on consequences of treatment. You can direct your GP, who's doubting Thomas, if you're unlucky enough to have one, or relatives or others, to those resources. It wasn't well understood. It occasionally still isn't by some of the health and social care profession, but we have a duty to change that and to make people aware. Okay, so just notice those, but don't always dance to the tune of them. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, yeah. So these are the killer questions. Are your expectations realistic? Do you pressurize yourself to perform? And are your expectations are your expectations of you higher than other people's? And if just in your own mind, you don't have to do that now. You can do that anytime. And just consider the consequences of you putting that pressure on yourselves. Okay. Okay. Next slide, please. So these are some of the commonly reported ones. Having an illness like this impact on your expectations to engage in everyday activities. People get fearful about that as well, in case they might be doing themselves any damage, I should be able to, I'm not sure though. Most people expect themselves to do everything they did, and therefore may adopt this, what we call boom and bust activity cycling. I don't mean on a bike. I mean, what you do there is on a good day, you'll use up all your energy really, on everything. And then you'll bust the next day or the next 2 days or for the next week. Because you've totally drained that personal battery that we were talking about earlier. And there's nothing left. And so you have to bust and people have to lie down. And that is very, very common because people think when they're having a good day, I better do it today, because if I don't, I might not have any energy left for tomorrow. So they push it and go, I've got to go and see my mum, got to go and see my friend, do the shopping. Ugh. Almighty crash. And then they get really upset. And they get demoralized and they start beating themselves up with a very big stick because they can't meet their expectations. These guilt feelings are accompanied there, and lowered self-esteem and reduced confidence. You don't trust yourself anymore to do stuff. And mood can become a problem for some people. And if it does, there's no shame in that, okay? If you've got some anxiety, if you've got some diagnosed depression, it is totally, totally normal, totally understandable. And there are things that can be done to help with that, including medications for some people, if you want to do that for a while. Okay, that there is no shame in that. Okay, and there can be a lot of help in taking the edge off some of these horrible feelings that people can have. And as I said just now, your expectations really may well be higher than other people's. And that friend thing about what advice would you give to your friend in the same situation would be much nicer generally than you give yourself. So please remember that, okay? The battery, and treat yourself like you treat your best friend, okay? Next slide, please, Charlotte. So here's the top tips for communicating about expectations with others. Let them know that you've got fatigue. As we said, you can't always see it. And if we don't educate them, people like you and me and Charlotte and so on, they'll never know, will they? Unless they have it themselves, okay? But if you're going to talk to somebody like your boss or whatever, your child or whomever, organise, arrange it, plan it, okay? Quiet space. Protect some time to do it. You may still be fatigued while you're talking to them, and that can be overwhelming from a cognitive and emotional perspective. So plan it in. Have a little script if you want, some points you want to talk about. That's always good when you're going to see a GP or health professional, to have your little list and to just write down your answers. That's what personalised care is about. And don't let anybody push you about with that, okay? You make sure that you get your answers addressed and stuff. Don't leave it until you're exhausted, to talk with people. Don't let it go, you know. I mean, a lot of us don't like conflict, but actually, if you're being objective and you're saying, look, this is what it is. I had a talk on it the other day, actually. It's unknown, you know, or people don't understand it. Keep it objective, okay? Show them these slides and other fatigue-related literature. Macmillan has some for more acute sort of fatigue when people are going through treatment on their website. And accept some help, but don't allow others to disable or smother you, okay? Because that can be a bit of a problem actually as well, where you get sometimes a couple coming into clinic and the patient is, you know, not enabled to speak for themselves. The partner, because of anxiety or because they feel a bit like they can't do anything, is speaking for the person all the time. So whilst support is great, make sure that you're still in there and that you talk and let people know how you're feeling. The self-compassion, yeah, communicating in a calm manner is really important. Communicate during shared activities. You know, if you and your partner, for example, or your teammates are going out for a walk or lunch together, you know, quietly, do it whilst you're on common ground, you know, and you're both sort of sharing probably a restorative experience if it's a walk, you know. If the communication doesn't feel right, do try and spark up a conversation to address it, okay? I know it's tricky. Try and maybe talk to somebody that you trust that's not part of the encounter, run it by them, make your list. But also be aware that CRF, cancer-related fatigue, can go away, okay? So, you know, hopefully it's not around forever. Some people here in this webinar this afternoon have had it for a long, long time, and that is really horrible. And I've no doubt that it probably waxes and wanes a bit. But, you know, there will be better times. There will be times when it's a real nuisance. And have confidence in yourself that you can tackle the impact and communicate your setback plans for difficult days, all right? So your setback plan might include, like, for example, if you wake up and you're feeling really dreadful, it might include something like, you know, sit down with a cup of tea for half an hour, if you can, a warm shower for 10 minutes, and then, you know, a nice warm towel robe put on, and you take your time to get dressed, for example. There are lots of ways you can formulate setback plans. Okay, next slide, Charlotte. Okay, so that it was a whistle-stop tour through what is a 6-session program of fatigue and lifestyle management with Bath Centre for Fatigue Services, with gaps in between for people to practice and so on. So I should imagine there may be a few questions, and that's absolutely fine. So thank you very much for listening to that part. And I'm going to hand over to Charlotte to actually do her Michael Parkinson bit. She probably doesn't even know what Michael Parkinson is.
I do, I think, yes.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Maybe I'm older than I look. Thank you, Anne. That was really, really interesting. And I'm sure even if people have seen it before, they still were reminded of the importance of these things. Because I think a lot of what you say is the stuff you read in magazines and things about what we should all be doing, i.e. sleep hygiene and stuff like that. So it's good to have those reminders and nudges sometimes, because you fall out of these habits, don't you, sometimes as well. Yeah. So yes,
life gets busy and takes over, doesn't it?
Exactly, yes. So just a reminder, everyone, I'm happy if you would like to write questions in the chat box as usual. So if you're not sure how to do that, it's a little speech bubble and it's labeled chat. Just click on that and type your question in. But what I would like to offer this time is, if you do wish to speak and you have the technical ability to speak, if you have a microphone on the device you're using, either raise your hand, which normally you can find at the bottom of your screen on Zoom, or type in the chat, I would like to say something, and I can then give you permission to speak directly to Anne. I would ask, keep it as brief as possible, because we've got quite a bit to get through. And also, obviously, please do not swear or say anything inappropriate, or I will be forced to remove you from the webinar. I hope that doesn't happen. For those listening on Facebook as well, you can also share questions with us through the chat function. Now, we've had a few, so I'm going to skip all the way back to the very first question, which I think you've already answered to some degree, Anne, but you talked about sharing literature and things. How do you have any further tips for people who are finding their healthcare professionals less than supportive or a bit unsure about whether their fatigue is related to their cancer or not? Any further advice you've got for those people?
Yeah, I mean, I think, gosh, there's a lot in there, really, isn't there, Charlotte? I guess it depends on the quality of relationship you have with that healthcare professional, I think, is the starter. And if you've got a supportive GP, for example, that's a great place to start. However, you might not have. There are resources available that you can print off, actually, and take along with you, actually, to your your appointment with your therapist or GP or so on. Generally speaking, I think hopefully most healthcare professionals will go, oh, that's really interesting. I haven't heard of that before. Or I think it's this thing, isn't it, about thinking that all health and social care professionals are experts, and actually we're not. Okay, we've got some knowledge, but actually you are the expert patients because you're living with it. Okay, and unless the healthcare professional has got it as well, or had it, or whatever, then they can't possibly, fully understand sort of what it's like to live with leukemia of any sort. So do take resources with you. I mean, if all else fails, you can change GPs, for example. It's not, and a lot of patients don't want to do that because, they feel they're being difficult and so on. But there's a few options there. And I mean, I guess that direct communication about saying, I really, you have to be assertive to do this. And even as a healthcare professional, I don't always do it myself. But to say, I really feel that you're not quite sure whether you believe that I've got this. But it is well documented, and I mean, Macmillan Cancer Support will tell you that other charities are available, but using that and chucking that in and saying about the consequences of cancer treatment report, it's going to make them stop and think about things. Is that all right?
Yeah, I hope that helps everybody out there wondering that. I think the other thing I wanted to mention is we have an advocacy service at Leukemia Care, and I'm not sure people understand quite what we mean by advocacy, but this is the sort of thing that we can help with. It's if you're struggling to express your views, if you're struggling to find some evidence to say this is what I'm experiencing and here's what everybody knows, because as Anne says, healthcare professionals can't know everything, then please get in touch with us and we will help you formulate that and help you sort of organize your thinking, because with fatigue it must be difficult to do that yourself sometimes anyway. So good chance for me to sort of plug our services.
That's brilliant. That's really brilliant. Yeah, I was going to say that there are helplines and things, aren't there, as well? Again, Macmillan have one, but this, Leukemia Care are leukemia focused. So that's a fantastic service that you can access.
I think the other thing that I was sort of thinking about as you were talking was a lot of I wonder how mental health comes into a lot of the things you're saying. And do you tend to work with people alongside mental health professionals to help them get in the headspace to be able to do a lot of what you've said today?
Most people don't need it. Most people don't need a referral to psychiatry per se. Occupational therapists are trained in psychological approaches as well as other approaches. We're one of the only professions that are employed in vast numbers in both mental health and non-mental health settings, actually. My own team composition is health psychologists and occupational therapists. So we work very interprofessionally. The vast majority of cancer-related fatigue patients that we see do not need or have a psychiatrist or a mental health nurse, in tow. Yes, emotionally, people do need support. We're a whole person. These techniques, the self-compassion, the taking the time, the taking the breath, the being mindful, etc., are all really integral to you being able to pace yourself properly. And that's why we take that approach. A lot of the evidence base for dealing with cancer-related fatigue is taken from the chronic fatigue syndrome literature, which again looks at the whole person and mind, body, emotions, and so on and so forth. And that evidence is very, very helpful, actually. So yes, we do take people on an exploration of their values, what's important to them, and address the mind as well as the body. But most of them don't need psychiatry.
Great, that's useful to know. I think, yeah, it's not well understood what an occupational health therapist can do. So I think that's really helpful.
Therapist, yeah. We like cement between the blocks, really. Okay. We look at the whole person. We look at what it is, what illness they have, how that impacts on what they want, need, and have to do, how the environment plays a part in that, and who the key players are, and how we can bring all of that together to give them a quality of life and make them feel in control and move forwards in either maintaining or improving quality of life. And that's what we do. And you do it across leisure, we do it across them looking after themselves, what we call personal care, and we'll also do it across work and childcare and so on. Anything that a person does. An occupational therapist business is anything that occupies a person's time. That's what we're good at.
That's a really useful way of thinking about it. Thank you. I'm just noticing throughout, we've got a few people saying, is cancer-related fatigue different to how you sometimes get fatigue as you age? Someone's asked, is it different to stroke? Are there different types of fatigue? And if so, how are they different?
Yes, thank you, Sheena. Thank you for that feedback. Yes. Okay. So for people who have fatigue linked to ill health, if you like, rather than normal aging, if you like, we expect normal aging perhaps to bring with it some fatigue. Menopause, that's another milestone, brings with it fatigue and things as well, which hopefully people will be able to move through, with hormonal treatments and so on and so forth, and as that subsides and so on. You will get tireder as we age, as we said. So the cancer-related fatigue, what sort of sets these apart, these illness-related fatigues, if you like, is that they're usually disproportionate to the amount of activity that people do. So if you're 80 and you've been out cycling for an hour or something, you probably are going to get tired. But hopefully, if you're fit and that's what you do, and you do it regularly, and you can manage that, and you don't have any underlying health cause that might get in the way, hopefully that will be alleviated with a nice meal, a nice shower, a rest, some downtime, maybe you could sleep, and then they'll be refreshed and good to go. With the ill health related fatigue, it's usually experienced as disproportional, but and is not alleviated by the usual sort of ways of dealing with it. But actually that fatigue that the cancer patients experience, the people with CFS experience, people with long COVID experience, and stroke and so on and so forth, have very similar features in that. I think almost without exception, out of the thousands of people I've seen now, many of them would describe it as, there are no words to describe how bone deep this fatigue is. It's not like usual fatigue, and it's not like fatigue that's linked to depression. That's really important. That's a big flag for us as a specialist service, because normally, you see, fatigue is one of the top 5 symptoms of clinical depression. And I do get people coming through with clinical depression. I had someone earlier, actually, a young person, who has in the past had a diagnosis of clinical depression. And we were very usefully talking about how she is now. She's engaged in a university course. She's living away from home. She enjoys her friends, and so she can't do as much of it as she'd like to do. but it's very different to the fatigue she had when she was depressed, which she describes that as apathy. The motivation isn't there. Okay, so I don't know whether does that answer your question, Charlotte? Is that all right?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. I think that's really, it's helpful to think about it in terms of going sort of beyond what we talk about it when we talk about the symptoms of leukemia as well. Fatigue is not tiredness. Fatigue is not normal for you, not normal for most people, and I think that message is still something we need to get out there among cancer patients as well as among the public regarding the symptoms as well. Yeah, that's really, really helpful. Thank you. We have had one person raise their hand, which is exciting because we've not tried it before. Anne, I'm going to give you permission to talk. You need to accept that. Anne, can you hear us? I don't know if we can hear you. We can't at present. I'll ask a different question, and if Anne starts talking at some point, then hopefully we can come back to her. So, we've had quite a few questions about how long fatigue lasts. So obviously we had someone who commented right at the beginning, and they said they've had fatigue for 50 years, and particularly interesting lady actually who's saying she had breast cancer, no fatigue, now has chronic leukemia and is experiencing fatigue. So do we know what makes fatigue last a certain period of time at all?
Okay, yeah, good question. No, we don't. Okay, we don't really understand the mechanisms of why people get it, and I think I had a very good answer then. It's slipping away from me as I'm speaking. Do we know? No, we're all different. So we know that there's potentially those 3 flashpoints in cancer-related fatigue: the pre and the around diagnosis and post. I know what it was. It's come back to me now, Charlotte. What we do know is that for some people it will go away, and there is increasing evidence to say that some of the cancer-related fatigues can go away with that physical activity. That's good news. There's also the prehab angle of things before people have treatments. There's a growing body of research literature around getting fitter before you have treatments. Now, I think that's probably particularly problematic for blood, the blood cancers, however, because it's not like you're going to necessarily have a particular, well, generally speaking, a surgical procedure like to have a lump removed or something like that, where you can get fit for surgery sort of thing. But there is a bit of that which can help as well, maybe to reduce potentially the possibility of fatigue. But what we know from the post-viral literature is that if people continue to adopt what we call maintaining factors, they are more likely to remain fatigued than if they broke the maintaining factors. Now, some of the maintaining factors are boom and bust. Okay, so if you can learn how to pace so that you're not boom and busting, you're working in a plateau more evenly, you've got routines and things, that can help to reduce fatigue or make it more manageable, and you're more aware then of what the levels are, and you can move it about a bit rather than continuously just going for it and feeling out of control. So some of the maintaining factors are those health beliefs actually as well. If you feel, I'm not doing that physical activity because I think it's going to really be bad for me or whatever. So health beliefs can get in the way from that psychological perspective as well. And if that can be explored a little bit and say, okay, well, if you're going to break your physical activity up into, 20 minutes over 7 days or whatever, try that. Do you have any negative payback in terms of your health on those days? Well, you can help to unpick those perhaps fear avoidant behaviours and health beliefs. Sleep, the routines around sleep, poor sleep cycles and things can actually maintain fatigue as well. And you can see how there's, in the absence of us knowing exactly what causes it and therefore not having the magic wand cure, we can understand then how these maintaining factors, if you can tackle them through lifestyle, supported self-management, if you like, you can begin to try and reduce the impact. So for some people, it will go away. For some people, it will linger on. And it might be perhaps to do with a little bit of their personalities as well, driving them rather than the cancer, perhaps. It's really difficult because we don't have those little tubes that we can take some blood and go, that's because she pushes herself, and that's because she's had that, sadly. So we need to bring in all the bits that we do know about how to manage it.
That's helpful, thank you. I think when you say there's sort of those mental factors involved, it's not that you're saying the fatigue doesn't exist, but you do need to be self-aware of your mental state driving those things.
Well, emotional distress will cause you fatigue.
Yeah.
And that's totally acceptable. I understand that. There's some literature around stress, depleting your immune system, isn't there? So then people get viruses and stuff, and quite a lot of our chronic fatigue syndrome patients have been under a lot of stress for a long time, and maybe also had a pneumonia or whatever, and we don't really know what causes that. But there's nothing else medically treatable going on that needs to be, a scan or so on and so forth. But they're left with absolutely debilitating physical, cognitive, and/or emotional fatigue. But the neuro system and the immune system, those are complex, and they're clearly not quite working as well as they might for our leukemia patients and others with fatigue.
Great, thank you. We have a couple more people asking to speak, so let's see if that works. Sheena, I've allowed you to speak. You need to unmute yourself if possible, if you'd like to.
Right, I have.
Hi, Sheena. We're a success.
Yay, hello. Lovely to see you.
Hello, Sheena. Lovely to hear you.
So I did come and listen to you about 2.5 years ago, actually, and really enjoyed it. And I wanted to come today to see how I can apply this to myself, and also to other people who have cancer or whatever. And I think it's fair to say that there's that my own fatigue has reduced over time. I think there's no question about that. But it can still come out the blue completely and utterly. I'm really interested in so I should say to the audience that I am also an occupational therapist. And in my previous life clinically, I worked with people with multiple sclerosis, and it's well known that people with multiple sclerosis suffer from extreme fatigue. So I went around the country talking about fatigue management, and then had a blood cancer, and had to apply it to myself, which is actually incredibly difficult. And if you're quite driven like I am, you actually just want to not do it. But I think the pacing bit is really, 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 you can't see me, can you? But I think it is really, really important. But I'm fascinated in the boom or bust bit, because I'm a keen cyclist, and I got myself an electric bike because that just seemed to be the right way to do it.
Nice.
I also have a road bike, and so sometimes I do the boom and bust, and I know that I will suffer for quite a few days afterwards, and I manage my lifestyle accordingly, but I can cycle further. So I think that there's some interesting thoughts there in terms of how you can push yourself, but also you still need to do the washing, you still need to prepare the food, and so on and so forth. And I think getting that balance and knowing yourself is really quite important as well.
Yeah, I think also, Sheena, it's lovely to hear you, and I'm glad that your fatigue has got worse. Improved. In terms of it getting worse, they will have fluctuations, and
Absolutely.
I think that's what takes people by surprise, isn't it, Sheena? That it can get worse, but then it can go away again, and it's that fluctuating, uncertain nature that causes people to lose confidence in themselves, actually, as well.
I think you touched on the thing that it's not just physical. I think the cognitive bit. So if you drive for any length of time, that's really a very demanding cognitive task.
Absolutely.
I had my 3rd full COVID vaccine about 3 weeks ago, courtesy of our wonderful NHS, and I was on the sofa for 30 hours. I could hardly get up the stairs. I felt like I'd been driven over by a bus, and then I'm fine a few days later. But I felt just like that chemo fatigue that I had that was totally flooring.
I think I'm sorry to hear that, Sheena. Yeah, quite a few of our patients have said similar, actually, that some of the vaccines have really whacked them out. And I'm glad it was short-lived.
It was very short-lived. So it's fine.
Good.
And I was delighted that I could get it, but it just reminded me of how awful that fatigue can be.
Yes, took you straight back there. I think also boom and bust wise, Gina, for the audience here, if you know that you want to boom one day, I am not. You're adults. I am not going to sit here in judgment on you and say, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing that." If people know what the consequences are going to be of booming, but they still choose to do it, then that is their choice. As long as you, like you said, Sheena, if you go for it on that bike and you think, well, I don't care, I'm just going to join in because my friends are all doing it and that's it, and I'll pay for it 3 days later. That's your choice. You're in control of that, and that's also okay if that's what you're okay with, So it's really important, that, isn't it?
Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Sheena. Great to hear from you. Thanks for sharing, Sheena. Thank you for being our guinea pig on the sharing.
First to talk. Wow.
I'll see you on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
Thanks, Sheena. So we've got a couple of other thoughts while we were having that discussion just then. Someone has asked, interestingly, when we talk about how fatigue can go away, they're wondering how you know when you are getting better and whether you should sort of tempt yourself into seeing if you can do a bit more and a bit more. What would you advise, Anne?
Only they can answer that question. It's very personal. What I'd say to that person is, if you have even the inkling that they might be getting a bit better, then you probably are. Okay, because you wouldn't be able to look over the precipice and contemplate a leap if you hadn't got to that point. So what I'd say to you is, if you feel, I feel a bit better, is maybe not boom and bust, whatever it is that person likes doing. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's walking or going to see a friend. So maybe that friend lives, half an hour away. They've got to drive to get there, or bus or whatever, and then you're going to be there for a couple of hours and then drive back or whatever. If you feel like, how do you know? How can I do that? How can I have increased my quality of life and get back to stuff? Is what I'd say to you is, the key word is adaptation. So get your friend to come to you or meet them a bit closer to home. Don't spend 2 hours with them. Spend an hour with them, because an hour of something is better than no time with them at all. And you've got to go iteratively, and it is really difficult because it's a bit like slimming or stopping your smoking and that sort of thing. Any change like that is massively difficult to do by yourself. So the pacing aspect, you can pace in lots of ways as well. You can pace by the distance, for example, that you walk. You can pace by how quickly you walk, and you can also pace by how much effort you put in. So if you live like I live in Bath and it's surrounded by 7 hills, you have to be superwoman to take an hour's walk, in any direction really. However, if you live in Norfolk, you could walk for an hour quite comfortably, because it's flat. So you need to be really canny about thinking about the variables. But what I'd say to you, if you're considering how you want to move in to improving, then start perhaps using a diary and say, right, I'm going to walk for 15 minutes today, and I'm going to just walk around the block because it's flat. I'm going to go at a nice pace. You might want to do the moderate, like getting slightly out of breath, if you want to try that and you can manage that. That's great. And monitor it. And if you can do an activity like that for, say, 2 weeks without it having big payback, then that might be great, and a great point to then increase it by 10%. Okay, so pacing. I have had patients say to me, by learning about pacing, it was the formula to me getting over this. Okay, so you try it, you set your baseline, you sustain, you increase by 10%. And do it iteratively, but only you will know, because Charlotte is different to me, to the person who asked the question. Very, very personal. What I'd say is have confidence in your goal setting and your baseline setting.
And it's interesting you say that someone then shared that their wife had noticed that they had slowly walked a bit quicker. So maybe it is useful to bring others in on this pacing, because I find sometimes personally that when you're so close to something, it's hard to see progress, whereas others can maybe see it a bit more objectively. I don't know if that's something you would agree with, Anne.
I would definitely. And you know what? When I see people in clinic, I say to them, listen, my ambition for you is to hold your hand, to step back from the chaos that probably seemed like your life for the last few years, potentially for some people, or a few months or whatever. It's usually, you know, a good year or whatever, because they'll come to us after their active treatments or so on and so forth. Yeah, you need that perspective. That's absolutely right, Charlotte. And I think engaging with some of these resources like the active rest and sleep log, getting your other half to do it, or your daughter or whatever to do it at the same time, and having a bit of fun with it, you know, saying, oh, you know, but don't beat yourself up if you can't do what they do. That's really, that is really important. Somebody said just now, yeah, but doing all that takes energy. Yeah, it does. But if you got some baselines for some of the more physical stuff, the high energy stuff perhaps, and you also begin to identify restorative green activities, you can then get canny about making sure it all feeds in, you see, it all threads, because the green restorative stuff is compassionate, is self-compassionate, you see. So you're not only achieving stuff, but you're also making sure that you're raising your energies again. Fatigue setting in, and I'm talking. She's typing gibberish. Oh,
it's
sorry.
not gibberish. It's fine. We can understand you.
and somebody asked about the slides. I'm very happy for you to have the slides. That's absolutely
yes.
fine.
Yes, that's something we will sort out after.
So don't worry about your gibberish, because you can always come back to your slides.
Just flicking through, I think we have covered many questions. It's interspersed with people sharing their stories, which is always lovely to see. Please do carry on sort of sharing tips and things. One I noticed that someone's partly answered, but I wanted your take on this, Anne, if we could. Someone's mentioned that they're experiencing fatigue alongside dizziness, so a more physical symptom.
Yeah.
Would you advise that they need to sort of seek help at that point rather than trying to manage it alone if they think there's some sort of physical cause?
Yes, I think, yes, it's a good question, because you can have other things, can't you, apart from, sadly, you know, leukemia, which is bad enough, as it were. I think there's a lot in not knowing the person and not seeing their medical notes and so on and so forth. This is a broad sort of brush here. One, I think, to start with the last comment you made there, Charlotte, I think if anybody feels this is not right for me, this is different, especially something like leukemia, you know, that dizziness has occurred, and then it's not a usual thing for them to have. I would definitely go back to their team, their specialist team, or the GP. If it's a thing that's been investigated, you know, and no other sort of, they're not anemic or whatever, and so on and so forth, then that's good. But you know, dizziness can come with fatigue, and you know, I think people before perhaps they had leukemia, you know, me myself, if I get really tired, I can feel quite lightheaded and dizzy. Okay. So there may be lots of causes for that, but I would say to the person, if it is different for them, I would definitely go and get it checked out, because it's your body and you're the expert on your body. It could be a cognitive fatigue. It might be something a bit physical. If you have it all the time, as I say, and it's been checked, then make sure you're eating enough. Make sure you don't get up too quickly, because there might be some postural things there going on. And maybe do something restorative, you know, just to settle it a little bit really, and get some fresh air or something like that. So we are really the experts on ourselves. So if you notice something very different for you, then go seek medical help.
Great, thank you. Sort of on a related topic, someone has asked how they would get a referral to your service, and I wanted to sort of combine this with when should you seek further help, and if they feel like they need help, how would they then get a referral to someone like yourself?
Yes, okay. So there's a couple of things in there. I think, again, you're the experts on your bodies. If fatigue is significantly getting in the way on a day-to-day basis, and you're just really stuck with your routines, and you just think, I can't handle it. You know, I've tried this, I tried a bit of pacing, I've checked my tablets are all right, I'm going to bed at a reasonable time, and so on. It is really down to you. And I think most people don't necessarily seek help, do they? And I mean, you know, for cancer patients during the last 2 years or so, you know, we know that you haven't come forwards as much as you could have done actually to get help for one reason or another. Don't struggle on alone if it is impacting on every day and it goes on continuously for months. You know, I mean, some of the diagnostic criteria for chronic fatigue syndrome, for example, they'll get referred to us if they've had significant fatigue that gets in the way in excess of 4 to 6 months. So, you know, as a rule of thumb, 3 months, 4 months, if it's still difficult for you and you've tried various, resources to follow and the tablets and everything are all okay and sorted, there's nothing else medically going on, your GP can refer you to us. Our website at the hospital has the referral forms. Failing that, our senior administrator, Jill Cook, who I think that her phone number might be on the end of this. Poor Jill, she's going to get inundated now. Bath Centre for Fatigue Services can be found. If you Google that, probably, and you can get hold of us, and we can advise how you do that. And we usually ask for a GP referral or a referral from one of your specialist sort of haematology team or something like that, because obviously they're the experts in your medical care, and the things that you do with us would complement whatever you're already doing with them, but very much, join up sort of thing. So it'd be useful if you were seen by us, for example, for your GP to know what you want from us, what you're getting from us. And for your haematology team to also know that, or other medical teams to know what it is we're doing that might actually support what they're doing for you.
Great. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. And again, a little plug, if you like, for the advocacy service. But I think if you're struggling to explain why you need a referral, or you're struggling to sort of advocate for yourself in that way, we are here to help with that sort of thing. It can be difficult, especially with fatigue, to put these things in order to explain yourself as effectively as you would like. So don't be afraid to reach out to us at any point.
It's also useful to have an up-to-date full blood screen done, to be honest, because as we said just now, okay, you've got leukemia, but you can have other things as well. You could have a sort of chest infection, all sorts of things, couldn't you? And for our patients, we always say, look, have you had a full set of bloods done? I mean, usually the cancer patients, to be honest, are being monitored anyway, so they are usually up to date. It's more the post-viral folks that haven't, and we say to the GPs, I'm sorry, but you need to do the full screening bloods first in case there's anything else you need to send them somewhere else for. So usually you guys are all up to date and things, but if you haven't and you feel you want to come and see us, I would suggest to your GP that they do the full screening. The referral forms for Bath Centre for Fatigue Services are on the Royal United Hospitals website in Bath. So have a look around there, and if you get stuck, you can always give Jill a ring and say, which form is it that my GP needs to use? The good thing about the C word, the pandemic, the COVID, is that we are doing lots of virtual assessments. In fact, I haven't worked in the trust for nearly 2 years now. I've been doing all virtual assessments. We are actually running virtual fatigue management groups as well, which is fabulous for our university students and so on and so forth, because you can be where the lovely Sheena is in Edinburgh or in Ireland or wherever, and you can still access a fatigue management group with the right referral. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I hope that's helpful for everybody. I want to come back to COVID in a minute, actually. So I've got a question not specifically on that, but someone's asked about telling the difference between depression and fatigue. And I think we've covered this throughout our conversation, but did you have anything further to add on that?
No, I mean, only from the point of view, in our experience, people who are not depressed, you might have low mood, quite understandably, you're grieving for your lost self because you can't do everything. The difference with depression and as I said earlier, really, is this thing about, motivation. If people are motivated to be engaged with, going back to work and, wanting to get back to their horse riding and so on and so forth, then, that for us is the red flag. Because if you were really clinically depressed to the point where it was an issue, the motivation wouldn't be there. You just wouldn't have the wherewithal. And this is that black dog sort of on your shoulder sort of approach to thing. Now, if you have some treatment for that depression, maybe cognitive behavioural therapy or maybe medication or a combination of both, or counselling, and so on, and you've had all that and it's still not alleviated and you've got your motivation, then maybe you've come through the depression and a low mood for whatever, for something that's not related to leukemia, to some traumatic event that's gone on in your life. It's bad enough being diagnosed with leukemia, but other people have other traumatic things. Life is like that. So if you tried those treatments and that's still not working, and you still want to be engaged with doing all of your daily activities and stuff, and the battery just doesn't allow you to, then it might be that we're looking at a different sort of fatigue to the fatigue linked to depression. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And actually, funny you should say that, because I have had colleagues from psychiatry who've contacted me to say, well, I've tried everything with this person, but, the fatigue isn't going away, but, we've been through CBT, we've done this, and so they've come into the fatigue service and they suddenly go, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. It's really helpful. Someone's asked, how many fatigue services are there around the UK? Am I right in thinking it's just you?
Yes, I don't know why I'm laughing. That's a very bad thing. There aren't, as far as I'm aware, there are none that actually operate like us. There are some therapists, there are some occupational therapists here and there working in fatigue management, but it is very patchy, very patchy. You can, if you check, possibly a good place if you wanted to check, is the Action for ME website. ME is the old term for chronic fatigue syndrome, but I don't think they'll change that name, so it's Action for Me. AFME. They may well list the most up-to-date fatigue services which deal with CFSME, but I'm not convinced that they will deal with cancer-related fatigue or be able to address your issues there. So I think we may be the only specialist service like that. But have a look. As far as I'm concerned, there should be more, and Macmillan Support would like more, and community-based services and so on and so forth. I mean, community-based rehab services, for example, it might be worth contacting them actually. And now we're getting these integrated care systems where health and social care are supposed to be joining up, okay, which will bring together, like, for example, the community-based occupational therapists working in neuro and rehabilitation. So it might be that you may be able to get some help from there, okay. Now, whether they'll be confident in cancer-related fatigue, whether they will see the transferability of what they can offer to you guys as a group is another issue. It's it's an agenda I'm sort of trying to push as we speak, but I suspect it's a bit patchy, if I'm honest, sadly.
There's certainly something we should think about here at Leukemia Care as well, as the agenda on support for fatigue. We talk about fatigue and we provide lots of support ourselves, but ultimately we need more services like yours. So maybe something we could take offline now.
Yes,
for us
definitely.
to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. And there's all sorts of drivers and politics and funding issues around all of this, guys. And I guess it's proving that there's a need. We know there is, and it's actually
100 people joined us today, so
yeah, that went up, and yes, indeed. But the digital offer, well, that's and feedback from this today. If you feedback to Charlotte from this today, and we share that, we could get that published somewhere as an evaluation sort of thing, and go, this is why we need cancer-related fatigue services. Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you know what? I'll let you into a secret. I've been extrapolating data this morning for that very reason, because it sort of was okay, and then financial things changed politically, and it went quiet again. But we know the need is there. So it's about people like me and Charlotte and you bringing together the evidence and the data to go, right, you commissioners, this is what we need. You need to do something about it.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
One for the future. Watch out, everybody, and we'll keep you informed on that front. The one thing I wanted to ask before we go, and we've got 3 minutes, I'll make it as quick as I can. Given that fatigue is a symptom of long COVID, and you mentioned you've seen a few long COVID patients, has that brought any developments in terms of knowledge about fatigue, or is it just sort of complicated matters?
No, that's a very good issue. Well, it's sort of at the beginning we thought, well, do we confirm a diagnosis of CFS? Because they're meeting the criteria. For most of them, there's nothing else to be treated or dealt with. Some, a minority of people have got other things coming out of the woodwork, of lung damage for some patients, but not all by any stretch of the imagination. And people hear about that sort of thing on the news and things. Some people have had some cardio sort of respiratory involvement. So I think for what it's worth, and this is my opinion, I think this is a worldwide issue, obviously. And I think because so much money is going into COVID research, it will benefit people with cancer-related fatigue, and also people with CFS and post-viral fatigue as well. Two relatives who've been playing sort of catch up with other sort of health conditions for a long time. Nevertheless, very disruptive, those two conditions, to everyday lives, as we all know here. But, this threat and the mortality that's been associated with COVID worldwide, I think will help us to, as a community, eventually to understand possibly better the mechanisms around why fatigue and what it is and this complexity and so on. So we'll watch this space. And as if I learn anything, I'll let you know.
I just think I'm constantly looking for silver linings from the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's why I threw that one in.
Yeah, I think there will be. I do say that to patients to say, for what it's worth, I think the COVID stuff will help us.
Absolutely. That's good to know. Okay, so I have run out of time and I won't keep you any longer, and I apologise for going over.
No, that's fine.
We've there's a couple of questions I didn't manage to answer that I will very, very quickly direct people to further information. One, someone asked specifically about whether CML treatments, TKIs, can cause fatigue. I think the answer is yes, any leukemia treatment can cause fatigue. And I'll leave it at that. If you want more information, please do get in touch with us. The second question I noticed was about whether fatigue makes you eligible for benefits. And I can say the best person to talk to about that is we actually have a welfare officer who you can contact at the information, at the email address coming up on my slides in a moment. So whoever asked that question, I apologize, I can't remember your name. Please do contact us for more information on that. Yeah, okay, so quickly.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Alan. There was saying thank you very much.
There's some lovely comments. Thank you to everyone who's thank you. And I echo that. And thank you so much for your time today. We wouldn't be able to do these webinars without you.
Oh, you're most welcome. You're most welcome. And as you know, if there's something good, I'm glad about that, Sheen. You've learned so much more again. Very good. If there's something burning you want to email Charlotte about it, Charlotte can always sort of contact me and we can have another discussion or whatever. I was coming up to Worcester from time to time to the support group there. They sometimes have one in the evening, didn't they, and stuff. Who knows? Maybe in the new year there might be I don't know. It'd be nice to have a celebration, something, wouldn't it? Really,
it would.
Yeah, maybe an afternoon or a day or something together and an update or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. But it's really good, and please do. Oh, I know Alice. That's another occupational therapist. Hello, Alice. Congratulations on your baby. Very good. Yeah, please do. Let's not stop talking. And please let me have the feedback, all of it. Thank you, Laura. I said, thank you, Laura from Wales. Goodness me.
Yes, it's our regional Laura.
Lovely to see you there, Laura. Yeah, let me have the feedback. Let us do something with it, Charlotte, because we've got feedback from before, actually, when Nikki used to gather some feedback, when she was with you and the charity. And we should really do something with it, because it's timely. We need to push it again now. So really good. And thanks for inviting me. Yeah.
Thank you for coming. So very quickly to go through my slides then, just a reminder of all the various different ways you can get information from us. We do webinars very regularly now, and plan to carry on doing so for the foreseeable future. We've also got podcasts, if you like that sort of thing, and a regular magazine that I recommend signing up for. Next slide, please. Ooh. There we go. Just a little bit more information on where you can get further help with fatigue from ourselves. We've got several different articles on the